So I think a lot of people kind of get plagued by perfection. They have to wait until something's perfect. It has to be bug free. It has to be pixel perfect. It has to be this grand thing. Where in reality is if you launch just a little bit sooner, but you actually had real feedback, you'd be building something that people want, not just something that exists in your head that no one's ever going to use.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Gumroad podcast. I'm your host, Justin Michaelet, a senior writer at Gumroad, where I deconstruct the tactics, strategies, and processes of top creators. Each week on the podcast, I interview creators and digital entrepreneurs who are at the top of their field. On this week's episode, I interviewed email marketing practitioner and expert Chase Dimond. Chase and I talked about how to use email to drive revenue and develop customer relationships, how to sequence emails and engage customers, especially during the holidays, and the metrics Chase uses to measure success. This was a wonderful, actionable, and insight-filled conversation. Enjoy. Our guest today is Chase Dimond. Chase, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, man. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for coming on the Gumroad podcast. For those who are listening to the podcast and not watching on YouTube, your last name is spelled D-I-M-O-N-D, not like the precious stone. Really, what I'd love to talk with you about, we have a bunch of independent creators who listen to this podcast and who use Gumroad and are part of the broader creator economy and community. You run Boundless Labs, which is an e-commerce email marketing agency. So you work with lots of B2B, or your business is B2B, and you work with lots of 8 and 9 figure businesses on email marketing. But I understand, and I would assume that many of the things that you do related to email marketing are transferable to independent creators. Would love to have your first introductory comments on that.
Yeah, so I kind of am in an interesting standpoint where historically in the past, I've run a pretty big editorial newsletter business. So it was much like The Hustle, The Skim, and Morning Brew. It was this email travel series that I grew from 0 to 500,000 email subscribers. So I speak that language. And today I still run my own weekly newsletter around e-commerce. Outside of that, I also am a course creator. And that's why obviously we're talking today, right? I sell my course on Gumroad. And I've done, multiple 6 figures on that. So I do sell courses via email. I send campaigns. I have all the automations, upsells, cross-sells, review requests set up for courses. And then kind of my main thing is, as you mentioned, I work with about 100 7 to 9 figure e-commerce brands, and we're helping them with their campaigns, their automations, their transactional emails. So the experience for me is really across those 3 verticals. So happy to take this in any direction.
Yeah, I should mention right up front that this conversation you and I are having could not be better timing, in the sense that when it's published, it will be exactly 14 days prior to Thanksgiving in the United States. So for those who are listening in the US, those who are outside the US and selling within the US, this couldn't come at a better time, right before Black Friday, right before Cyber Monday. And I understand from just listening to you, learning from you, that for many of these e-commerce brands, many of these companies and independent creators, 40% of their sales can come during this portion of the year, this quarter of the year.
Yeah, and in email, it will definitely contribute to a huge portion of that, especially with all the volatility that we're seeing on top of the funnel through iOS 14, iOS 14.5. Facebook, Instagram, that whole landscape has become a lot more difficult. It's become a lot more challenging, a lot more expensive, right? So a lot of these e-commerce brands, a lot of these creators, a lot of these folks that have newsletters or SMS lists really need to leverage this to drive a bulk of their revenue during this period of time. So there are a lot of tips and tricks for these holidays. And if this is going to come 2 weeks before, hopefully this will give people, enough time to execute. But ahead of like Black Friday and Cyber Monday, you really just want to hype people up and get people super stoked for what's to come, right? At this point, 2 weeks ahead, you don't need to launch anything massive yet, unless you want to hit your VIPs maybe with something early and then let other folks know that something's coming soon. And then during that period of time, during Black Friday and Cyber Monday, is when you seriously need to ramp up the number of emails you send. People far send too few emails throughout the rest of the year. Most people I talk to are sending maybe 1 or 2 campaigns a week, maybe a few campaigns a month. And I think it's a couple of reasons. One, as consumers, we don't want to receive 3, 4, 5 emails a week from other brands. So we put ourselves in those shoes. And it's great to be compassionate and empathetic and to be in our users' shoes, but we want to send multiple emails per week. If you think about the average open rate for an email, maybe it's somewhere in the ballpark of like 15 to 35% for a campaign. That means if you send 3 emails, one person might actually only see and open one of those emails. So you need to send enough emails that you actually give people a chance to open, click, and hopefully convert. So during Black Friday and Cyber Monday, you actually want to increase your frequency to hopefully one per day. So from that Monday through Cyber Monday, for that 1 week stretch, you might want to go every single day. Or maybe from that Tuesday through Tuesday, you kind of want to go for every single day. And customers, sure, they're going to probably opt out a little bit more than they would. They might unsubscribe at a little higher rate. But for the most part, they've expected this. They know this is coming and everyone else is going to do it. And by you not doing it, you're probably leaving a lot of money on the table.
Makes perfect sense. Hold that thought because I want to drive much deeper into the mechanics and how you can plan some of these things. Given the fact that we're having this conversation now, it might as well go into those details. But I want to make sure that before we foot stomp those things, we talk about the relevance of all of this. And that is, and one sort of pathway into that is this owned land versus rented land idea. A lot of brand new creators won't understand intuitively the relevance of this for them. In other words, they don't really think right when they're starting out about platform risk and driving a funnel into their email list and then using that list. Do they think, or rather the intuition is, I can sell directly via Twitter. I can sell directly via Facebook. But my understanding, having lived in this for several years now, is the conversion rate from social directly, say Instagram, for example, is way lower than email. So just sort of to paint that picture for us, set that stage for us.
Yeah, social obviously is super important, right? We are dependent as email marketers on social for traffic generation, right? We are only as good as the traffic and the leads that come through. That being said, with email, you have the ability to touch people and reach out to people at different stages in their life cycle that you wouldn't know if someone was just on social, right? You wouldn't know if someone was just on social if they had added something to your cart or not, or what specific products they had looked at, or maybe if they were a male or a female at scale. You wouldn't really know this. With email, right? We get to see how much time someone spent on our site, the products that someone's viewed, the things that they've added to cart, the things that they've started checking out, maybe the things that they've purchased, right? We know how much they've spent. We know the last email that they've opened. We know the last thing that they clicked on. So the ability with email to be super laser pointed and kind of super targeted is really the secret sauce, right? The holy grail of marketing is the right person at the right time with the right message, right? And email is the perfect channel for that because you have all this data on each person and you could do it in a way at scale. So email is a channel for conversion. If you think about why people sign up to your list, it's typically for some kind of incentive or offer or interest, right? Most people enter your list through some kind of pop-up or through some kind of form that offers free shipping, free ebook, free product with purchase, 10% off, $10 off, whatever it might be. So they have intent, right? They're interested in what you have to say. And it's really long form, right? Or it could be short form. And you can send people campaigns and automations and you have all this set up. So really long-winded. I see social, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook as a way to drive traffic to your website. And then the way that you actually convert and nurture these leads is typically through email and more recently also through SMS.
Yeah, the point you make around data lands really hard. I've listened to many creators, people like David Perel, who are very explicit about and open about the fact that they're driving everyone to their personal website. And for David, who sells these cohort-based courses, the whole idea for him is to understand people who are just ready to join the cohort, but haven't pulled the trigger. So the abandoned cart sort of a problem. And I know he clears his schedule for 2 or 3 days during that launch window. And he has direct one-on-one conversations with people who have listened to every bit of his content, clicked on every part of the purchase right up until the end and then abandoned it. And that sort of a thing. So, and another thing, like, this is sort of related, but I know you've talked with some other experts in your network around just gathering more and more data than what you can do behind the scenes. Actually ask people, like, what is the name of your dog? What is the birthday of your dog? So then you can see that back and personalize all of those email communications.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm actually just quickly kind of scrambling to pull up my Gumroad. I'd actually love to give like a real example of, I did a product launch a couple weeks ago and I had a code for each channel. So I could track the attribution towards email, towards SMS, towards YouTube, towards Twitter. And I'd love to kind of quickly rattle off some of those stats. I might have to do some kind of quick math. Is that okay?
100% great.
And I guess kind of some context. So for Black Friday and Cyber Monday, I launched this PDF, this 92-page PDF that I wanted to sell, and there was this really tight window of time. So in doing this, in a 24-hour period, I did a little shy of six figures in revenue. I did like $80,000 or $85,000 in revenue, and 80% of that success came before that product even launched. It was a couple of things that I did, and I'll obviously share the stats in a minute. But one of the things I did was I built in public, right? There's this concept of building in public and just being super transparent. So back in August of this year, I started talking about, hey guys, I've been running an e-commerce agency for the past 4 or 5 years. I've been doing email now for about 8 years. Would it be helpful if I compiled everything I know about making Black Friday a success on the email portion of it? Would that be helpful? And would you guys pay for that? And I had a couple hundred people respond, and a lot said yes. And obviously some said no. So that was like the start of it, right? And then I would just kind of tease like, hey, I'm talking about campaigns and here's a screenshot. So for weeks and for months, I actually built up some of the hype every couple days, every couple weeks. And then about a week before I figured out when I was going to launch, I started telling people, hey, in a week from today, on Wednesday, I'm going to be launching. Keep an eye on it. Stay tuned. More info dropping tomorrow. I ended up rolling out an SMS list specifically for people that were interested in this launch. And by the way, I told people for the first 24 hours of launch, you're going to get 50% off, and I'll never do 50% off again. So I basically drove a lot of, kind of hype. I drove a lot of awareness to the fact that this was a 24-hour sale. You do not want to miss it. It is 50% off, and I'll never do that ever again. And so I basically got like 300 or 400 people on this SMS list. I also then sent people a calendar invite. So there was this website I used called Calendar Snack. It's free. I have no affiliation with it. And I was able to send a link out where people could add the date of the event. So this Wednesday at, let's say, 8 a.m. PST to the calendar invite. That way, on that day, on that time, they would actually get a notification saying this event is live, and I'd have a code in there. So I did all these things to really hype it up. I sent emails, sent SMS, and that's what contributed to it. So now going into the stats. So this course sold 273 copies. The average that people paid for it was around $374.50, which was half off. So I listed at $749. That was half off. So I have a bunch of different codes, but the very first go, email drove 71 sales. SMS drove 19 sales. Twitter drove 28 sales. Facebook drove 2 sales. Instagram drove 12 sales. LinkedIn drove 2 sales. BitClout drove 0 sales. My calendar invite drove 2 sales. I had an affiliate drive 10 sales, and then an affiliate drive 4 sales. YouTube was 3 sales, and pretty much like all of the rest, more or less, that I'm looking at were also from subsequent emails and a little bit of SMS. So I'd probably say like 60 to 70% of my sales from that course actually came from email. And a lot of the people that bought after that first 24 hours, they bought at $100 off or $200 off. They didn't buy it at 50% off, which was $374, but I was able to send people different messages at different times. So email was super successful. And the whole point of hyping it up and doing a limited time launch was super effective.
And when you said that these were purchased prior to the actual launch, were these pre-orders?
So sorry, to clarify, what I mean is like 80% of the sales actually came from before I even threw up the page to buy it. And what I meant by that was just the fact that because I had built in public, because I'd give everyone the heads up, because I had the calendar invites, because I had people on the SMS, they all knew that when this day came, that they were ready to buy it. Whereas if I launched and then started marketing, I would have missed out like on that hype. So I think because I overhyped it, so I didn't do any pre-sales. I just did most of the sales came that 24-hour period. So 80 or 85,000 of the 100 plus thousand, I think I've done like 110,000 in that course, came within the first 24 hours.
So I understand the chronology. This was in October of 2020 that this was occurring, and you're gearing up for 2021, and presumably you have another set of promotions that you're running this year.
Yeah, so to clarify, so I launched my first ever course in October of 2020, but the one that I'm talking about right now that did the 100,000 almost in 24 hours, this was October of this year, actually. So this wasn't my first one, but my first course launch, I did similar kind of offer where I did a pretty heavy discount up front. It was $749 and it did like $250 off. And each week it increased until it got to $749. So this was the most recent course that I did that well. Obviously, we're going to have a bigger audience. I've done the course launches before. So that's why I wanted to share the pre-stuff. Building up to the launch and building the hype is probably the most important thing. Obviously, after the content, right? The content was great, but building in public and getting people ready for the launch, getting them primed, I think is what led to the success.
Yeah, I read the other day a nice pithy tweet, potentially. I don't know, it could have been an email, but it said, look, a lot of people focus on building a great product, but hate to break it to you, you need to spend just as much time marketing your product as you do building the product. So I'd love to hear you talk about that, the sort of the marketing angle, and then obviously wrapped in bubble wrap with sort of email campaigns and all of those tactics. How do you view that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the product has to be good enough, right? It doesn't have to be the best product on the market. The caveat being is the marketing has to be good, right? Good marketing really makes up for products being decent or lackluster. Whereas a great product with bad marketing, it doesn't matter. No one's ever going to discover it. There's so many creators and engineers and builders that I know in my life that are way smarter than me and way more talented than me. But the difference between them and me is that when I build in public. I ask for feedback. I let people see it. I get insight from people, and I'm building something that someone wants. And the only way that you build something that someone wants is you put yourself out there, you market it, you promote it, you get feedback, and then you iterate, right? So I think a lot of people kind of get plagued by perfection. They have to wait until something's perfect. It has to be bug free. It has to be pixel perfect. It has to be this grand thing. Where in reality is if you launch just a little bit sooner, but you actually had real feedback, you'd be building something that people want, not just something that exists in your head that no one's ever going to use. And I'm actually doing this right now with an email design tool that I have coming out in the next couple of months, where I ask people, and I basically, as a creator, and I live this, the most requests I get is, how do I build great emails, right? So I know that there's demand for this. And when I ask people, well, what in a good email builder matters to you, right? People want it to automatically import into their email platform. They want it to be able to export the HTML. They don't want to have to like do crazy coding. They want it to be really kind of like a WYSIWYG that's kind of 2.0 of what things are out there. And now with the marketing, right, I'm able to start using customers' language in that marketing. And I think that's really key. And I think I put a tweet out about this the other day. The best marketing is the marketing that uses the language that your customers actually know and say and want, right? You don't want to sound corporate. You want to sound human. And the way that you sound human is if you were telling me something about something that you know, I would take notes and use those words. New, exciting, unique, saves time, saves money, right? Really focusing on not just the features, but really focusing on the benefits. And marketing is the way and the vehicle in which it communicates that value and drives people to make some kind of action.
Yeah, I've heard of creators interviewing their potential or prospective customers, people who are in their communities and so forth, taking verbatim notes and echoing back the precise language, the exact language that people talk about with respect specifically to the problems that they're having and the pain points that they're feeling, and using that as a way to resonate in that conversation over email.
Yeah, one of my favorite emails that we send is this whole email concept, what I call problem meets solution, right? So you kind of point out the problem within an email or even on a landing page or any kind of marketing, right? Even in an ad. You point out the problem that people have, right? Maybe like you're selling like something for back pain or something, right? Do you have problems with your back? Like, is your back stiff? Is it keeping you from playing with your kids? Is it keeping you from, losing weight? Whatever it might be. To let you know, we've introduced this product that helps you, work on your posture. By the way, I'm just making this up, but helps you work on your posture. It will help you sit more straight. It will help you not be hunchback. And by doing this, right, this is going to allow you to get your life back. It's going to allow you to play with your kids in the front yard. It's going to allow you to go on that fishing trip with your friends, right? So it's kind of this whole problem meets solution. The way that you identify these problems is you actually have to hear from your customers. And what are the things in which they use your product to solve? And oftentimes the use cases for these people are really creative, and they're things that you never ever thought of or actually knew existed. A number of times that we work with e-commerce brands and they built it for this category over here and never knew about this category over here, it completely unlocks this new market of people that might actually even be more passionate about your product than these people you initially intended. So leveraging that problem meets solution within an email. Hey, you have X problem. Here's Y solution. And here's a discount that will help you make sure that this problem is no longer a problem for you, right? Problem solved, let your friend knows about this. Thank you. Great. End of deal.
Yeah. You talked about feedback loops. I want to tie that together with incentives. There's feedback loops with respect to the content and the substance of what you're offering or the product that you've built, whether it's a physical product or a digital product. There's also feedback loops with respect to the communication itself and incentives related to those. So, for example, if what you really want is not just an email to be delivered, but someone to click on it, to interact with it, to engage with it. What you want to do is offer incentives for that engagement itself. And so, if you're sending out an email related to a deal, it's not just like you said, hey, here's 50% off for Black Friday. It's more like for 3 emails in a row, if you've opened them, then you auto receive an email that gives you a deal and that sort of a thing. So when I listened to some of your other conversations, I was surprised by how almost the level of rigor that you can drive down, and you could have you could have hundreds of different automated reactions behind the scenes to any different click or engagement, any type of click or engagement.
Yeah, and there's a few things that come to mind that I want to touch on there. Within Klaviyo, the email platform in particular, and hopefully and probably you can do this in other email platforms, you have the ability to create these custom tracking links. So say, for example, I'm an apparel brand or something, and I have clothing for men's, women, children, and maybe like a sales category. Across like that product navigation, the header of the email, you could actually tag each of those things. So if you were to click on men's, right, be like, okay, great. He's interested in looking at items for men, right? So then I would serve you down this category of, hey, here are my favorite items for men. And I've even organized them from least to most expensive, and they're all under $30, right? So one of the brands I worked with was the Chive, and they have the e-commerce brand called the Chivery. We would do that, and that would work so well. Another thing that we would do with them is because they had so many different categories of t-shirts. They'd had like drinking t-shirts, funny t-shirts, sports t-shirts, all these types of t-shirts. What we would basically do in a welcome series, or like in a series where people first get these emails, we would have, let's say, 9 of the top most popular best-selling categories, and we'd have tags on all of those just so we could identify, great, you're a man, and now you like drinking t-shirts. So we're going to start sending you drinking t-shirts throughout, right? Because we want to personalize the experience specifically to you. And oftentimes what you click is probably going to be more accurate than actually what you tell us, right? It's kind of this whole thing where like, if you ask someone what they want, they might say this, but if you actually look at their actions and behavior, it might be similar, but it also might be different. So that's like a really cool thing that we do in a lot of emails to figure out and almost survey people without them knowing. And that sounds bad, but it's not obviously used for malicious intent. It's to be able to personalize the experience. And the more personal experience, the better it is for the brand and the better it is for the consumer. You as a consumer are going to find what you want quicker, and the brand hopefully gets the transaction out of it. That's one thing that comes to mind. Specifically, like for Black Friday and Cyber Monday, we introduced this concept to our clients of like VIPs, not just based off dollar spent, but VIPs based off engagement. So traditionally, most people focus on and spend most time on the VIPs by dollar spent. And that's obvious. That makes sense. Continue to do that. Those are your loyal people. You have to do that. But what we basically have been doing is introducing this tier of VIPs that have engaged with your emails throughout the year. Maybe they bought once or twice from you, right? Maybe they haven't bought the 3 to 5 times that the VIPs have. But how do we move these people and treat these people a little bit special and call it the fact that we know that they're being an engaged member and offer them something special? A lot of times VIPs, sure, they want great deals and they want great discounts, but that's not typically the biggest motivating factor. The typical factor that motivates them the most is exclusivity, right? They want access to founders. They want access to community. They want access to drops first. They want limited supply of whatever you're doing, right? They want to be the ones that are vocal in the community. So we've been introducing this concept of rewarding folks to the point that you mentioned. They've opened emails, if they've replied to emails, if they've clicked emails, if they've viewed things, so you can move them into this consideration of being heavily engaged to actually converting. So that's another interesting thing. So like those are kind of like the two things that come to mind. And this is like really the power of segmentation. Again, which goes back to why email is a great channel, is we got to see at a very granular level on a specific person by person basis, what everyone cares about and what they're doing. So the more relevant we could be, the more we're going to win. And this was like Facebook in the heyday, right? Facebook knew every single person, what they did, what they bought, what they cared about. And today, because of Cambridge Analytica and Apple's privacy, a lot of this data is masked on top of the funnel. So you have to really own this zero party and this first party data, which is the keys to the kingdom.
Makes perfect sense. I'd love for you to react to a tweet that Sahil Lavingia posted a couple of days ago, because it's, I think, incredibly relevant to what you do. He said something like, don't let Web 3 distract you from how early Web 2 still is. And what you're doing is quintessentially Web 2 in a sense. But it seems to me that you're still, we're 15 years in, and we're still scratching the surface with what's possible on your own land, on your own owned media, as they say.
Yeah, dude, it blows my mind. Like, so we work with over 100 brands right now on the retention side alone, which is email and SMS. And we've worked with hundreds of brands or audited or looked at hundreds of brands. And the amount of people that are still missing the basics is insane. I mean, we only work with 7, 8, 9 figure brands, and the number of those brands that have like sub 10% of revenue coming from email is just mind blowing. A healthy email channel should have 15, 20, 30, upwards of like 40% sometimes, but like that sweet spot is about 20 to 30% of your revenue really should come from email. Obviously, it's dependent on like if you're really aggressive on top of the funnel, then email revenue might kind of ebb and flow as your top of funnel kind of ebbs and flows. If you're obviously like a CBD or a cannabis brand or someone that has a little bit more restrictions, maybe your email revenue is higher because you can't run as much aggressive paid ads. But for the average person, average brand, email should account for about 20 to 30% of your revenue. And there are still probably hundreds, if not thousands and hundreds of thousands of brands that are missing the fundamentals, right? So the fundamentals, like at least for an e-commerce brand, and a lot of this is going to be applicable to any brand, is you have to have these 3 core automations. One is the welcome series for non-buyers. So people first join and enter your list, and then they receive a series of emails. This is all about welcoming, educating people, nurturing people, delivering social proof, and really answering that question. And what's in it for me? We're all selfish. We're all self-serving. We want to know what's in it for me. If a brand can answer that question pretty quickly, good chances are that you're going to have someone stick on your list for a decent amount of time. And hopefully, even better, they're going to buy from you, right? So we want to educate people in that sequence. If we told them in the pop-up, we're going to give them a free ebook, some kind of discount, make sure we deliver that, right? That's super important. The next one is what we call an abandoned checkout. It's different than an abandoned cart. Depending on what you sell, sometimes this might be possible. This is very big in e-commerce. Depending on how you have your, landing page set up, you might be able to collect that information before people enter their billing and send them an abandoned cart or abandoned checkout email. That's really basically for the people that are heavily engaged and have heavy consideration, but they, for whatever reason, didn't buy. Maybe you don't offer free shipping. Maybe they want to see if you're going to send a discount. Maybe, frankly, they just got distracted, right? They had Slack notifications, they got a phone call, whatever it might be. That's the abandoned checkout. It's a few emails dynamically showing people the item or the items they left behind and really incentivizing and encouraging them to buy. And the last one is what we call the customer thank you, right? This is where we literally say thank you. We extend our gratitude and our appreciation. This is going to reduce buyer's remorse. This is going to increase the bond. And this is going to serve them any kind of content if needed. How to use our product, what to expect, if they have any questions, where to hit you up, those types of things, right? So the number of brands and creators and businesses that don't have those set up is insane. And then on the other side, right, I think the biggest problem that people face is they're not setting enough campaigns per week. So for our clients, we're setting in the ballpark about 2 to 4 to 3 to 5 campaigns per week. And I guess to clarify, so an automation or a flow is an email that's sent based off some kind of action or behavior. Someone enters their email into a pop-up that will trigger a welcome series for non-buyers. Someone's on your list, adds to cart, doesn't start checkout, doesn't buy, that triggers an abandoned cart. And the third type of email, it's called a transactional email. That's for when people purchase. So if they purchase, right, my Gumroad course, I might have an email automated from Gumroad that says, hey, thank you so much for the purchase. If you have any questions, follow me on Twitter, hit reply, right? So those are like the kind of like the transactional emails. On the campaign, again, the one-time sends, send, product launch emails, send collection launch emails, send holiday offers, send content, send social proof, current events, right? Any kind of bundling if you sell e-commerce, right? Bundling is a great way to increase your AOV, your average order value. So if you have 3 products that are normally $30 each, bundle those together and sell that whole bundle instead of at $90, sell it at $80, right? So there's all these different types of things that you can be sending and you should be sending.
I have so many burning questions because it just seems like people talk about the Web3 rabbit hole. There's a rabbit hole here that you could go down forever. I have 2 real burning questions. The first, I'll go in the reverse order that they came to me. The first is, this all sounds like so much work, frankly. And I used to work at a company where we used the word superpower, and you would be aligned with where your superpower was in terms of your role. If you were a great product builder, you would obviously build products. There are a few people that are great at building, say, a digital product and also have a passion and are good at some of this e-commerce email marketing stuff. Everything that you've just been talking about. For me as an independent creator, it just sounds like a distraction from my actual work, actually making the product, for example. When in fact, as you've articulately proven earlier in this conversation, that the marriage of those two is highly important and the thing that's compelling. So the question I have is related to man, how hard is it to write these emails, to package them together into campaigns, to do all the automations, the technical side? So the art of copywriting plus all the technical automations, that just sounds very intimidating.
Yeah, look, it definitely, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It can be a lot. And that's kind of like when I talk about like the must-have automations, I named three of them, right? There's dozens and hundreds of these that exist. I think it's really important that you piecemeal and kind of take it down part by part, right? It doesn't have to be perfect, but at least if you can get coverage across some of the main categories, that's going to really serve you well. Kind of one stat. So like I have about 5 products right now, right? And I've sold about 15 to 1600 copies, or 15 to 1600 unique people have bought from me, but I've actually sold like 25 or 2600 copies, right? So there's a lot of people that have bought in 2 or more products from me. And the way in which I'm able to cross sell and upsell is typically through email, right? So I think if you're like a creator and you really want like the basic bare bones, let's break it down. So when someone, again, most people are running traffic maybe to like an ebook if you're a creator on Gumroad. So if you're running traffic to an ebook, right, as soon as people enter their email into your form, you're going to send them right the ebook, right? That's the first email. And then depending on there, you might want to have like 1 or 2 emails kind of talking pretty quickly about your upsells or your offers that actually people can buy from you, right? They've taken the bait, they've gotten the ebook. How do we now actually put them into some kind of membership that you have, some kind of coaching program, some kind of course, some kind of PDF, whatever it might be? So we just want a few emails just breaking down and explaining. And the great thing about this email content is if you start with email, you could take this and put it into a Twitter thread. You can take these and put this onto a LinkedIn post. So what I basically do is I think in emails, because emails typically are going to be longer form. And then you can kind of take those chunks and put them into different platforms. You can even record a video with the email as a script, and that can go on TikTok or YouTube or Instagram Reels, right? So in my mind, I think through emails. Other people probably think in tweets or think in Facebook posts. So just get a few emails out on the front end, giving people whatever you promised and just introducing them to whatever it is you have. You're going to have to do this anyways. Like there's no point to build a product if you're not going to commit to selling it, right? So you need to use email to sell this as a great channel. And that's one. Two is after people buy from you, the relationship doesn't end there. I think that's a big mistake that people make. It's like they work so hard to get people to buy. And then once they buy, it's like, cool, this is done. Great. I'm going to ignore you. You're going to sit and collect dust on my email list for decades, right? Once people buy from you, that's a really great way to get feedback, to get reviews, to get testimonials, to get them into a continuation program, to sell them and introduce them to new things. My current buyers of my courses, they become clients of my agency. They become people that refer my stuff. They become affiliates. They're the ones that are going to buy from me again. Like those are actually the people I care most about. I care most about my buyers versus non-buyers. Obviously, I care about my non-buyers too because I want them to become buyers. So get just a few things post-purchase set up. Even if you can't send the 3 or 4 campaigns a week, that might be an overkill for a lot of these smaller creators. Get one campaign out per week. Send this for like a month or two. Look at the ones that have done well. Just go back and retweak those, right? You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to create something from scratch every single time. Maybe the first email you sent was a massive hit. Maybe the second email was a massive flop. Look at it, right? Was one short form? Was one long form? Was one plain text? Was one design? Did one have an offer? Did one not? Just study what works for your audience and just build, right? Just build the templates. And it can literally be plain text emails. So for our e-commerce clients, a lot of those emails happen to be designed emails. They look very pretty, this and the other. But for my own personal newsletter, for my own courses, everything is just text-based. It's simple, it's easy, it's to the point. Does that help?
Yeah, that helps. I implore anyone listening right now to listen to as many interviews as you can on these topics, because you can just pick up concrete, tangible items to just steal, frankly,
Yeah,
and to use
100%.
yourself. So I have a question that you might not often get, and that is trying to delineate the limits of email marketing. I think you articulate often in public the power of this form of communication with your potential and prospective customers and your current customers. But there are limits, obviously, to what is possible with email marketing. I'm thinking of, in particular, and this is a little bit far afield, but it used to be that the ESPN app and website would serve you holistic articles about the sports world. And I loved those. Back in the day, you could read these beautifully written things. Now it's almost as if all of the articles are written automatically to serve just the team that you're interested about. So I get notifications on the app for my favorite teams in each individual sport, but I don't get notifications about anything else really. And that's in an app. That's not in an email. That's a notification on these apps. So obviously, I'm driving toward the idea that email serves a function, but there's like on the level of infrastructure or the full stack, if you will, there's applications that can send you notifications and and create engagement on that level. So I'd love to hear you, if you haven't talked about it yet, like where are the limits that you're driving toward at this time?
Yeah, if I understood correctly, so one of the limitations of email is that like you can't display a video within an email. Like you can't watch a video within an email. So the way in which you get around it is you throw up like a GIF or a thumbnail with a play button, and you send traffic to, YouTube or that website, your website with a video embedded. However, so that's one. There is a technology out there. It's called AMP. It stands for Accelerated Mobile Pages, and it will allow email to interact much like a landing page where you can do like a product carousel between photos. You could fill out a survey within an email. So that is technology that is current right now. There are some limitations to it because it's somewhat technical and there are a lot of steps. So I haven't really seen anyone actually implement that. I'm optimistic and hopeful that like in 2022 we see more of that because like a lot of people have fill out a survey directly within the email. In some cases can be done somewhat easy. In other cases it's kind of difficult. And I think the big one that needs to happen and probably is going to happen sooner rather than later is like the ability to transact within an email, right? That's pretty difficult and almost impossible. Not impossible, but it's pretty tough today. But I think like with some of these like one click upsell or at least one click to purchase, some of these types of things like storing information, I see email becoming even more important. And through that capability, like if you can send an email, people can actually almost view it as if it's a landing page and then transact directly within the email. That's powerful. So I think that's, I guess, an opportunity slash limitation. So a lot of the things I'm talking about are limitations, but I think with some of this new technology that's being introduced and developed, it ends up becoming opportunities.
Do you feel like you're in an arms race with the email providers? Superhuman, Gmail, like they've got, obviously the primary versus promotional tab, spam filters and all of that.
Yeah, it's definitely challenging. Email deliverability really is like the backbone of email, and it's something that not a lot of people talk about or focus on. Still today in 2021 and 2022, people are just batching and blasting their entire list without any segmentation in mind. And that's like the quickest way to end up in spam, right? And obviously, right, the promotions isn't as great as the primary folder, but it's not the end all be all. It still is an effective place to be. And more often than not, like the reality of a lot of e-commerce brands is that they're probably going to end up sitting in that folder. So it is tough. And now that Apple introduced iOS 15, and that's a whole topic in itself, but kind of quickly touch on it. So for those on Apple devices that have iOS 15 that end up adopting kind of their principles, it's for their specific emails, they're not going to be able to show like before whether someone had opened that email or not. I think from my understanding, and it hasn't been adopted as quickly as I thought it was going to be. Apple will basically show every person that's adopted that as opening every email, which obviously just is not the case, right? It's not the case that every single person's going to open every single email. And I think with where we're at the time of recording this, about 25 to 30% of the people on Apple have actually consented to this masking of their IP and masking of their open rate. So open rates to some degree on Apple devices are going to be super accurate. They're going to be kind of inflated and not as great of a metric. But at the time of recording this, it hasn't been as drastic as I thought it was. iOS 14, iOS 14.5, which was the effects for like Facebook and Instagram and top funnel, those have been a lot more devastating and drastic. But, again, who knows what iOS 15 has in mind? Don't know what Apple's planning. So I think those are the types of things that are kind of concerning. That being said, you still can send emails. You just have a little bit less visibility on Apple people on who opened it. But email still is and still will be a great channel. But to your point, like, yeah, you don't know what's coming down the pipeline with some of these guys. They could do things that change it. But I think email's been around for so long, so many people are using it that it's not going to ever disappear, right?
No, it's certainly not. Concluding question, unfortunately, because we're driving against time. And that is, since we're sort of looping back to the beginning of the conversation, we're at this moment where we can share this episode with folks at just the right time. You often talk about creating a sense of urgency. So maybe just a couple of concrete ideas leading into the holiday here for those who are selling in the US.
Yeah, so kind of circling back to some of the ones, right? Like the hyping is so important. So in the case of my own course, in the 24-hour period, in the case of e-commerce, like hyping and getting people really excited is super important. Like if you just launch something, you just launch it, right? Like sure, some people are gonna be excited, but if you can build up the buzz and excitement, whether you drop clues or you make people guess or you just kind of tease it, like people kind of want to pay attention to some of the next emails, right? You kind of create this like kind of mysterious and kind of this intrigue where people are going to be like, okay, what's coming? What's next? And that's one. Two is like, again, like I think going back to a lot of these things that we talked about, looking at your competition, like what is your competition doing? what kind of discounts are they offering? When are they launching their sales? You don't want to be giving a discount that's like 2 or 3x your competitors, right? You're leaving a lot of money on the table. You also don't want to be 2 or 3x under, right? Because you're probably going to lose money. So I think like benchmarking off your competition and benchmarking off the industry and having a couple people, whether they're influencers or brands or businesses or creators, be your North Star, benchmark off what they're doing and what they're saying. And I think following a few people really closely is better than following everyone, just a little bit, right? I would pick a few people. During the week of Black Friday, Cyber Monday, as I mentioned, like the frequency of campaigns needs to increase. And the one that people don't think about is the frequency of your automations actually need to increase. So in the case of like an abandoned cart, we typically will send email one, let's say like anywhere from like 2 to 4 hours after someone abandons their cart. Email two might be somewhere anywhere from like 12 to 24 hours, and email three typically is 24 to 48 hours later. So people in normal times will receive an abandoned cart sequence, 3 emails, let's say over like 3 or 4 days. During Black Friday, Cyber Monday week itself, you want to like really shorten those, like maybe by half, right? So the first email, the first abandoned cart email, you might want to wait like 15 minutes to an hour to send that one. Email two, you probably want to wait like maybe 12 hours. And then email three, you want to send 24 hours later. And these subsequent emails they receive is only if they don't convert, right? If they buy off the first email, they won't receive emails two and three. If they buy on email two, right, they won't receive email three type of thing. But you want to increase when you're sending those, because otherwise someone might come on Black Friday and in your normal sequence, they won't receive actually the cart email, the last one that has the discount or the best offer, until after it's ended and your sale's gone, right? So you want to increase and be more aggressive on the automation side. And both, before and during, you want to have the pop-up in the automation, for how you collect emails set up to actually display your most recent offer. You don't want your 10% off offer that's typically good for Q1 through Q3 to be showing up in people's face if your offer actually is 30%, right? You're going to lose a lot of people and they're going to be kind of confused, like, well, why are you giving me 10% off if everyone else is getting 30? So those are kind of some of the quick tips. And then after Black Friday, Cyber Monday, for at least a few weeks, you kind of want to cool it a little bit on sending discount emails. You're going to obviously want to reach out and engage people, but you're going to more want to hit them with education, with stories, with stuff about your team, asking for their feedback, giving them help versus just pushing more discounts down their throats. So those are kind of the quick tips I've got.
I would recommend anyone who is in this business who wants to sell something, just go back 2 or 3 minutes, listen to that again and again, take notes, press pause, etc. I have a bonus question for you. And this gets to sort of Chase as a human and what energizes you doing this. I understand and I've learned from your history, this stretches all the way back to even before high school, all the way middle school on. And we won't go through that entire chronology, but what is it about email marketing that drives you out of bed? A lot of people would say, that's like the last thing that I would really be like jazzed about. But it seems like, there is truly a human element here. You're obviously helping these enterprises and these people drive 20 to 30% of their business straight from email. So what is it that makes you happy about running your team, your agency, and working with people on these problems?
Rapid fire go through this. What you're alluding to is at 13, I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, and I joined as the youngest board member, served a 6-year board term. So I basically learned guerrilla marketing through this charity of driving awareness and raising fundraising. And we drove tens of thousands of dollars during my 6-year term, like for me personally, my friends, my group, through sending emails to friends and family, to calling friends, to using AIM, right, to taking ads out in the paper. So I got really scrappy and I didn't make any money from it, right? So I learned marketing really more like, for lack of a better word, like altruistically. And that's really kind of like everything I've done has been building content and community, right? How do we serve people and how do we help them become better, smarter, save money, whatever it might be? Because you just know on the back end of that, like it's going to serve you, right? So for me, when I looked at every single thing that I'd done well, email was really at the core. Out of college, I built an edtech platform that connected students on college campuses with other in their classroom. And we scaled that to hundreds of thousands of college students. And the big way we acquired students was we went to college directories and we just found people's emails and we sent them highly personalized emails. The way in which we retained users was we sent them emails every single time. If they were a business student, a new business test or study guide or notes was published, right? I then went on to build an email travel series that I grew from 0 to 500,000 subscribers. Email was the entire business. We acquired people through cold email, finding their emails on Instagram. And then the whole business was a weekly newsletter. It was much like the Hustle, the Skim, and Morning Brew. And then, later on, I had built other tools. I had a dating site that went viral, had millions of people. that was a big email play. We got a lot of press through email. So I just kept looking at everything I consistently had done well, and email was at the backbone out of it. And then about 4 or 5 years ago, I made the focus on just being very specific to doing e-commerce email marketing and becoming the best at it. So in the past, 4 or 5 years, we've sent over 1 billion emails and done close to $100 million in email revenue for our clients. And that's just growing rapidly at this point.
Yeah, and there's a 25-to-1 ratio given what you're charging them.
Exactly. Yeah.
Pretty good ROI.
Yeah, it's huge.
Well, Chase, let's leave it at that. But I really look forward to talking with you more in the future.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate you.
Talk soon.